Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast. I am one of your three hosts, Illeagle86, and I am joined as always by my good friends Techtic and Nerdbomber, and all of us here are just here to say Happy World Senior Citizens Day. Woo! I just googled August 21st holidays because that's the date that this episode comes out on. It's not, so I should say as we live and breathe right now, we are 2 days out from World Senior Citizens Day. What are you guys doing to prepare?
I am going to enjoy a nice hot candy.
Or like a butterscotch?
Yeah.
I actually did have a Werther's the other day, and it was delightful. 10 out of 10 experience.
I'm just going to spend the entire day moving slowly. That's kind of my plan, in a manner of reverence for the elderly. It's also National Spumoni Day, but I don't really know what Spumoni is, so I went with World Senior Citizens Day. August is so many months, because I just googled August 21st holidays. It's Cataract Awareness Month. It's Black Business Month. It's Family Fun Month. Happiness Happens Month. I don't even know what that means. It's National Catfish Month. National Dog Month. It's also National Breastfeeding Month. So, I don't know. Plan accordingly, I guess. It's Water Quality Month, National Sandwich Month, Learn Japanese Month. Some of these have to be made up.
You know, I've had some really good sandwiches this month, so I'm stoked about that. I think I'm really living up to the holiday.
I had a Reuben recently. This is neither here nor there. I'm not a big Reuben guy.
What's wrong with you?
I don't really go...
Who doesn't like a Reuben?
I don't love sauerkraut. I don't love sauerkraut.
Reubens are not good in the summertime. They are a fall sandwich.
That's true from my limited experience.
I don't know if I agree.
It was pretty good.
Have you ever had a cold Reuben?
No. Why are you eating them cold?
Who's eating a cold
That
Reuben?
seems
The
wrong.
cheese has got to get melty.
Nah,
What's the
cold
matter with
Reuben.
you?
Cold Reuben. So good. Refreshing.
That's actually psycho. Well, what's the best sandwich that you've had this month? You're talking up your sandwiches. I had a Reuben. It wasn't that great. So I'm looking for some... I need you to lift me up.
Classic turkey
right
BLT.
Nah, dude, I had this really delicious pulled pork sandwich on a Hawaiian sweet roll. Whew. King's Hawaiian roll. Is that what it's called? Yeah, it was so good.
It is. Not a sponsor. Let's circle back to the turkey BLT. Is that really called what it's called? Because isn't that just kind of like a sandwich? Isn't that like a club? Well, I guess the club also has ham on it, right? I don't know. I'm not a sandwich expert. No better time to become one than National Sandwich.
And it wasn't
Month.
a club because it was
sandwich.
a turkey BLT wrap, which is still a sandwich, but not a club.
Is a wrap a sandwich?
I think it's a sandwich.
We're definitive on
I don't
that?
know.
I don't know if I agree.
A wrap is a wrap.
Then why does Subois make them?
Now they do because they're struggling, and they just had a whole powwow of the upper minds because everybody still knows $5 footlong, but their footlongs are no longer $5. So they're trying to do some other marketing gimmick to bring us back.
That is, that's a good mini unplanned news segment for the podcast. Subway's in the crapper right now.
It
financially,
is.
I guess. They had an emergency earnings call. And Nerdbomber hit the nail right on the head. And I've seen a lot of Twitter discourse or whatever about oh no, Subway's failing. I can't imagine why my footlong is $14. That's why. This isn't rocket science.
Well, there's also that and then the massive deli meats recall.
I don't think they were impacted by that though, because the deli meat
That was
recall,
Boar's Head.
Yeah, that was Boar's Head. And ironically, and I'm not saying that Subway deli meat is cheap, but Boar's Head is supposed to be cream of the crop. And I'm pretty sure Subway is not using cream of the crop.
Smart.
Right. They're using whatever the opposite end of the crop is. I recently traveled for work, and I was working in a place for a week that didn't have a lot of convenient and close food options. So I had Subway for lunch, I think 3 out of the 5 days.
It's not that bad if you have a coupon.
It's okay. It's okay. I think people crap on Subway's quality, and you just did with the meat, and that's a fair shot. I've never actually disliked Subway from an eating perspective.
Honestly, same. I know I knocked on their meat, but
It's just the price.
it's good. Yeah, it's the price.
It's just the price. Yeah,
And the whole
now
Jared
I'm just
thing, that's a
never-
little uncouth, but
Oof, yeah, that's to say the least. I mean, I don't seek it out mostly because of the expense, and also because I make my own sandwiches and bring them to work every day of the week. So why would I eat more sandwiches?
I think the youths boycotting all these places, which is good. These things were supposed to be a convenient, fast, cheap food option, not a break the bank option.
do you know I have another beef, and I don't mean
Pun intended.
Yeah.
sure, but I don't mean to go off on a fast food tirade here, or tyrant. What rant?
Tirade.
Whatever. Tirade.
It's a tirade.
Yes,
You're a tyrant if you go on tirades.
I was thinking about the Pokemon. It's fine. Anyway, though, do you notice that anytime, so like Subway has coupons, and if you don't have the paper coupon, you have to like download their app most of the time to use it. If you want to go to McDonald's and they have a coupon, you have to download their app. Like all of these fast food places make you download an app to get the cheapest price. And like, did you forget what you are? You are a fast food place. I'm not trying to have like 15 apps. What are we doing here?
You are so correct. And like, I'm at a point where, first of all, every time it's not like, it's worse than you're even saying. Every time you go to McDonald's now and you pull up to the drive-thru, because I go to McDonald's. I'm an American, all right? I'm not ashamed of it. Every time you pull up to the drive-thru now, before they're even like, welcome to McDonald's, they're like, do you have our app? Like, they literally just ask you, do you have the app? And I'm like, can I just have some food, please? I will pay you the money. But yeah, all their deals are on the app. Now they're just trying to harvest our data. Like, it's the same thing. It's very transparent. I could get the app and probably save money, but now I'm just mad about it. So I'm definitely not going to. Like, it's that for me. Starbucks also real big with the app thing. And again, I'm like, this is supposed to be a very simple transaction, and you're making it more complicated than it needs to be. Is Subway doing that too? I assume they are, because
every fast food place, every single one. I'm not downloading your app. I'm sorry to say.
I don't want that. And
you know what? For the senior citizens and senior citizens days, they should stop with the mobile stuff. Be for senior citizen day, like, right. Drop them.
Be inclusive. Be inclusive and considerate. I'm glad you brought up the app thing, because I was actually going to bring it up myself. Like, that sort of thing just drives me bananas. Because again, it doesn't take a PhD to see what they're trying to do, and I don't want them to do it. And it just bothers me. Shout out to Subway. Shout out to senior citizens. Shout out to sandwiches. I guess shout out to Rubens, but I'm still kind of indifferent to them. And shout out to turkey BLTs, which are apparently an actual sandwich. We have a lot to get through today, so I'm going to move on from the sandwiches and the nothing talk into some something talk. We have to talk about The Office. We have to talk about my favorite man, Nicolas Cage. And we have to talk about Dragon Age. Is it the Veilguard? I believe is what it is. We'll get to that later, because that may be the juiciest thing. Let's start a little light and jovial, as we often do. Let's talk about my good friend Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage, who I can't remember if I talked about this last week. I just saw him in a movie called Longlegs, which was not very good, but not because of him. He was the classic Nicolas Cage, almost going too hard in the paint kind of guy. And he has just been cast to play John Madden in David O. Russell's directed movie about John Madden called Madden. This purportedly, what I want to kind of delve into here, this movie is purportedly about not so much John Madden's life. Like, I'm sure it will kind of be about that, but I guess it's going to be about how EA was like, they came to him and was like, we want to make an NFL game, and like how that whole process went. Because now, for better or for worse, and I think a lot of people would say for worse, like, Madden is the NFL game. It's the only one. So the process behind making it is probably pretty interesting. And, you can see so many movies that have come out lately. Like, I know you guys watched the Tetris movie, and there's a lot of like video game. Well, I shouldn't say a lot, but I think we're going to see some like, here's how we made this video game movies, this being one of them. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely interested in this. I think Nicolas Cage can probably play John Madden pretty well. I don't know that John Madden was a particularly subtle person, and that's probably the single most important thing when it comes to Nicolas Cage playing someone in a movie. So I guess for you guys, what's your level of interest in a movie about John Madden? Just to start with.
My level of interest in a movie about John Madden, and it's not just going to be a biopic, it's also going to focus on, like you said, the game. The game side of it very much interests me, and how his involvement was there, and why him. Like, I get that he is very much the voice of the franchise, but like, it didn't have to be, And
he is like when you think of NFL coaches, though, he is like the guy.
No, I know, but like, don't you feel like there could have been like a million different like alternative realities?
Yeah, let's dig into that, because I think like Nerdbomber, you just said like, in terms of NFL coaches, he is the guy. I don't know that I agree, actually. I mean, think about like Mike Ditka. Like, Mike Ditka has a lot of name recognition. He has kind of a stereotypical and classic kind of persona that like, it's been done on SNL, but he was also like a good coach, right? Like, I think if you made a Ditka game Like, I don't know if you would call it Ditka followed by the year. It
I
doesn't
mean,
sound as
that
good, I
might
guess.
be why they did
But-
it though. Like, they probably market tested a bunch of different coach names, and they were like, which game sounds most, cool to you? And all of the parents were probably like, not Ditka. I know
But
that's
why
not
not
how
just
it's
call it
pronounced, but, like,
NFL?
I mean, there are. So to be clear, Madden is EA's take on the NFL franchise. But like, there was, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was like NFL 2K.
Yeah, there were
like,
2Ks, yeah. But they got kind of run out of the business by EA. Is
yeah,
my
they signed
understanding. I
like
never
an
played any of the
exclusivity
2Ks.
deal. I think 2K was eating into their sales so much that EA went to the NFL and was like, "Hey, we want to sign an exclusivity deal," and it basically like elbowed anybody else out of the market.
I mean, John Madden, relative to Ditka and most other coaches you could name, in fairness, like he's also a color commentator, right? So like America kind of already knows him for that reason. I guess I don't know the timeline exactly. I don't know if that happened before or after he made the game. I would like to think before is when he became a color commentator. But like for that reason, he's already in America's living room. So it's probably a very natural transition. He's good at explaining the game. He makes the game, I guess, more accessible to someone who's just sitting down to play a video game. Like that's probably a lot of what went into it. I think this could be very interesting. I'm thinking about like, who is the John Madden of today? Like if they were to revamp the entire thing, take Madden's name off of it, which by the way will never happen. You can think of like I think he's less of a big deal now, but like when Tony Romo first became a color commentator, everyone loved his personality and his insight into the game. And like
Romo has a ring to it.
if
Romo 2025.
Yeah, like if Madden didn't already exist, it would probably be the same. It would be that sort of thing where they'd be like, let's make a game, and Romo will be like the front man for it, I guess. I think now with Tom Brady going into broadcasting, there's a chance you could make the same exact argument for him. But like getting back to the Nick Cage of it all, which is it's not the first time I've said that. I think it's good casting.
I think it's bad casting.
You think it's bad casting.
I think
Who do you
it's
want
absolutely terrible
instead?
casting. Not Nick Cage.
Who do you want instead?
I mean,
You
he
have to
looks
pick- you have to
he
pick
looks
somebody else.
nothing like an old or young John Madden. And my guess is they asked a bunch of people, and probably better people, for the role. And in classic Nick Cage fashion, he said yes to whatever came across his desk.
I don't agree at all. I think he looks enough like John Madden that like with like, Hollywood makeup and costuming, I think it'll be a pretty solid match. Again, I'm also relatively influenced by having just seen Longlegs, in which Nick Cage is almost unrecognizable. I think he's capable of big transformations like that. The key is going to be how subtle can his performance be, because we're used to like even the things he's done very well recently, Longlegs being one of them, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, Pig. Like he's got some absolute bangers lately, but
But
none
he's
of
also
them
got
feature
some
subtle
flops.
performances. So like, and he has flops, yes. David O. Russell is a director that I don't know that I have the greatest relationship with. I think the only David O. Russell movie I've seen is a movie called American Hustle, which I really
It was kind
didn't
of like, it was okay. Like everybody hyped it up. Wasn't it up for a bunch of awards? And then I finally watched it and I was just
Yes.
like, I don't get what the hype was about. Like, I think it was just because it was a period piece and had great costumes. I feel like that was the real reason people were hyped about the movie. But like the actual movie itself was just like, fine.
Yeah, so looking at his, I guess, filmography a little bit more, Silver Linings Playbook was pretty good. I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
did-
kind
I
of like,
enjoyed that
I
a
think
lot.
that's another one that one won a bunch of awards. Joy, I think I watched half of at one point, like when I was visiting my parents.
I
and
thought
they had
Joy was
HBO,
pretty good,
and it was
too.
like, it's like fine.
Russell Crowe, by the way,
Amsterdam-
would have been a way better John Madden. That's my vote.
That's interesting. I think you're just picking Russell Crowe because he's heavier set. I don't know that,
But it's a bigger build. Like Nick Cage is too slender. He can play Slender Man, sure, but he's just too slender.
If you don't think Nicolas Cage is going to commit and put on a bunch of weight for this role, then you just don't know Nicolas Cage. That is my.
I worry
That's
they're
my
going to put
rebuttal
like,
to that.
and I don't,
Fat suit.
yeah, I feel like they're going to put a prosthetic on him and it's not going to look natural.
And I know what you're thinking.
again,
Tom
you're-
Cruise looked
you're-
great in a fat suit. I know. Hollywood has magic. I get that. But he also looked
No, you're
goofy
just.
in that fat suit.
Are you talking about Tropic Thunder? Which one are you
Yes,
talking
I
about?
am. I am talking about Tropic Thunder.
Great movie, by the way. David O. Russell also made The Fighter, which is pretty good. I'm just kind of indifferent to David O. Russell as a director, I guess. Like, he's not one of my favorite directors. I also think that, like, I guess Joy is also a factual film. Like, this, I have a lot of questions. Like, is David O. Russell a big football fan? I think you probably need to be a pretty big football fan to make this movie the right way. I also don't know if Nicolas Cage is a football fan for that matter, so that's another important question. Lots of questions surrounding this. I'm not sure I have any of the answers. And in particular, I also don't have an answer to like when this is coming out. I presumably it will not be until like at least like 2026, but it was essentially just announced. I'll probably see it. I don't know that I'll go to a theater to see this unless like it starts getting gangbusters reviews. This is, I will say, something that I could easily see this kind of coming out of nowhere and like being a awards darling, not like a best picture necessarily, but like maybe picking up a best director, maybe best actor for Cage. It'd be interesting to see him get back into that,
as we've been
into
talking,
that sphere.
And especially like when we were talking about why they chose Madden, I did a little bit of Googling about like the history, and I was listening, but also doing some research and some interesting things that I think could actually make for better movie fodder than I anticipated. So originally, the creator of the Madden franchise actually approached Joe Montana to endorse the game, but he already had a deal with Atari, so he turned it down. And so Madden was kind of like the backup choice. So after they signed on to Madden, they thought that he would just endorse the game, but then he actually got involved with, you know, the development and design of the game because they originally wanted to have like 6 or 7 players per team. Like they didn't want it to be like real football. They wanted it to be more arcadey and
like Tecmo. Yeah.
Right. And they were saying like there were technical limitations. Having a full team on each side of the ball would be too much. And he basically was like, I'm not going to put my name on it if we're not doing the real thing. So I guess he was very intricately involved with the development and design of this game, which is pretty cool. Like, who knows what we would have gotten if Joe Montana did sign on to endorse it. You know what I mean? Like, Madden might not be,
right.
Like, we might all be playing arcade versions of the NFL and no one would be playing like I hesitate to call Madden a sim of the game, but like it is at the moment the closest you can get to playing real football in a video game form.
Well, you know, and I'm Googling now, like there was a game called Joe Montana Football, came out in 1990 and that was it. Like it wasn't, and it looks like they had the right number of players on each side of the ball. So like it, you know, that wasn't a very arcade. And also, I should say, I have like barely played Tecmo. Tecmo may also be 11 on 11. I have no idea. What comes to mind with Madden and like this story in more recent years, I would say Tony Hawk was kind of the same way, where like I think Tony Hawk was originally approached, like they were like, hey, we want to make a skating game, put your name on it. And he was like, all right, well, this is going to be my passion project now. Like, I think Tony Hawk kind of claimed ownership of it and cared very deeply about it and still does. Like, even doing the reboots and things, like he's been very, very active in it. And it does sound like Madden was kind of the same way, which is cool. You know, like I remember as a kid, this is going to age me, but I believe it was Madden. Let me see if I can Google the cover, because like I can remember the cover very specifically of the first one that I got. It was Madden 99. Madden 99, man. What a freaking game. That game, it was so formative. Like my dad brought it home. He got it on his way home from work and like surprised us with it for the Nintendo 64, and like we played the crap out of it. And John Madden created a really good thing. I think, like I was kind of alluding to before, like people have real issues with the franchise these days. People still also take it very seriously, and it has a lot of cachet. So like I think it's a little bit, what's the word? Like people complain about it, but they actually like it. But you know,
they complain
it's
about
hard to imagine.
It's like anything
else
these days. Every multiplayer game that you play online is going to have microtransactions up the yin-yang. Like, things are not going to always go smoothly. There's going to be weird updates. Things are going to be nerfed. Players aren't going to have the right ratings that you want. That's any multiplayer game, but people complain because they love the franchise so much.
Well, I also think that graphically and maybe not so much these days, but like probably 5 years ago or so, it was notably lagging behind what the technology could provide, and people started calling EA out for it. This
Actually,
is kind of based on vague memories.
I had this really great screenshot. I remember I played like the Madden career mode, where you basically like you have your dude and he goes through a story and you make the NFL and you try to win a Super Bowl. And there's a point where they have me up at the podium giving like a post-game presser, and I don't have a face. Like, I'm wearing a shirt, my body is up there, there's a hat, but there's like nothing. There's nothing underneath the hat. There's just a gap. There's no head. And
like, and glitches are one thing, but like, I just think that like people were seeing other sports games come out. Like, I even remember like on the Xbox 360, like playing the Madden games, like they were perfectly solid graphically. But then I think I played like the first one. I'm not a big NBA game player, but like I think like with the console we happened to get NBA Live 06 or something, and it just looked like so much better and like graphically so much more impressive. Like, I feel like even back then it was just like, because again, they had the exclusivity deal by that point. So they were like, all right, we can make this kind of like, they're not going to make it crappy, but I don't think they cared enough, These days, I'm not sure that's necessarily true anymore, but I think it's had a little bit of an uneven history, especially after Madden himself kind of faded out of the picture because of, waning health and other things. He passed away like 3 years ago, I believe. And again, he himself was, I would say, pretty universally beloved in football circles. Like, I don't think anyone had issues with him. He was a player's coach from what I remember. So like former players all loved him. Hall of Fame coach. So it'll be interesting to see Nicolas Cage do something real wacky and make a video game. So again, not sure when that's coming out, but be on the lookout for that. Let's talk about The Office. It's actually interesting. It sounds like has just been announced. The Australian original, The Office. So there's an Australian version of The Office being made, essentially. It's coming out October 18th, which is very soon. And this is, I think, the first we're kind of hearing about it. This is going to be a Prime Video project. All we really have is like a picture. Like, we don't have any videos of this yet. It's all Australian and New Zealanders. So I don't think there's many names you would necessarily be able to pick out from this list of people that are going to be in it. And, it's essentially going to be another version of The Office. I mean, I don't want to make that sound minimizing because that's not what my intent is, but I guess this is like, I want to see, this is the 13th version. I knew it was in this article somewhere. 13th version of the Juggernaut franchise, which of course started, I think, over 20 years ago with the British Office. I think we talked about on the show before, like, I think all of us have watched the American Office because it was aggressively targeted to our generation. And in particular, when Netflix was taking off, one of the big things on it was The Office. So, like, everyone was watching all of it. I think there's a couple things we need to dig into here. One is how you guys feel about the American Office, the British Office, which I tried watching once, and it's a completely different experience. And the other thing I think we need to talk about is how a show like The Office, which is kind of predicated upon awkward workplace humor, like how that would age now, or I shouldn't say how that would age now, how it would play now, because I know that it's been a fairly steady stream of conversation in the past couple of years of like, I think people can still watch The Office and it can be funny. Like, I haven't rewatched The Office in a number of years now, but I think people are rightfully kind of bringing up like Michael Scott is like actually kind of a really bad person a lot of the time.
Problematic.
And like, he's a very problematic person, a terrible boss. Like, so how would that humor? It's a bit of a tightrope in 2024, right?
Well,
how do you make a show like this in the same way and staying true to the original while also kind of ascending beyond that potential problematic nature?
Okay, you start by breathing so your co-host can answer.
Yeah, done. I'm breathing now.
So a couple things you had said there. The British one was catered towards British humor. The American was catered to American humor. So obviously the Australian one is going to be catered towards Australian humor. Okay, all that said, any comedies such as The Office are just a fantastic medium because, unfortunately, we will always have a society in which people have to go into the office, and you will always have the sarcastic, I don't want to say sassy comedy or really just satire of what is an office. I mean, there's been other shows that aren't office titled shows such as Workaholics, where it's just satire or goofy antics within the office space. And so I think it plays well, even better now, because there's new elements of what is involved in office. It's your working from home days. It's your, hey everyone, we're going to be flexible, but not have all these other, there's so much meat on what is the proverbial office bone that it ages fantastically because there's always something to be had there. It doesn't have to be copy paste of, okay, we're just going to do our humor of this same situation. You can have these same kind of couples and groups that are in the office, but you can fill them in with new antics and things that do age fine, or at least are acceptable in today's medium.
And I think there are a lot of other shows that unfortunately didn't get the viewership because, they don't have the benefit of being built off a successful existing IP that have tried to do the same thing. I mean, Abbott Elementary is one, and I understand that it's a school and not an office, but that is a workplace comedy that has done very incredibly well because I don't want to say they stole the Office's, formula. But I think by leaning into like one-liners and quirks, like your workplace is the setting, but ultimately you have to have good characters, good character development. And I think that's something that the original Office had in spades. And if they do the new Office right, they will also have in spades, and they'll just be able to, like Techtic said, pull it into, this day and age, maybe get rid of some of the suspect jokes that don't really age well now. And I mean, there's shows like American Auto, which I felt like it was a super underrated TV show that obviously focused on a different part of the office worker culture because it was more focused on the executives, but it also leaned into, that workplace comedy. And I thought it worked really well because regardless of what kind of work you are, whether you're a teacher, whether you're an office worker, whether you're a mechanic in a shop somewhere, like it doesn't matter what kind of work you're doing. I think we're seeing the success of shows like The Bear and Abbott Elementary. Like your work, everybody can relate to it. It doesn't matter the setting necessarily, but the fact that you're at work and you build relationships with people. Like I remember when I was working in a grocery store and I'm like 16 years old, and somebody that I talked to every day was some dude who was like 55, and we were buds. And like playing on those dichotomies, it doesn't really matter if you're in an office or not, but that workplace comedy, there's just so much ripe for the picking, and you don't have to necessarily stray into the Michael Scott side of things where, there was like blatant racism, misogyny kind of peppered in. I think you can evolve the humor, but still utilize the environment very well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the workplace comedy it's not something that The Office really pioneered, right? I think that's what you guys both said. And like, you can go as far back as shows like, you could argue that Cheers is a workplace comedy, Taxi, like super, super old sitcoms. And also what's worth noting, like we've talked about a lot of good shows, but also like there have been a lot of really crappy workplace comedies. And the workplace is so many different things, like the West Wing's workplace comedy, Superstore. I'm just going off the top of my head here, but like that one where Joel McHale is I think it's really called Animal Control.
Oh,
that
yeah.
show was terrible. Like,
it grew on
there's
us.
just so many renditions.
It grew on us. I don't know. Did it get canceled or is it still going?
I have no
Control.
idea.
If you got past, like, basically he was kind of the worst part of the show, but everyone else was good.
It's, the kind of basic designing principle of movies is like a character goes on some kind of journey and it develops and experiences will kind of change, whereas TV shows typically revolve around a bunch of characters coexisting in a single location, or like they're like, so often it is a workplace or like a courtroom or Army Surgical Hospital in Korea. Like there's just so many examples. I do think that all of them are accessible in their own ways. I think The Office, one of the things that made it so successful, the character development, like you said, Nerdbomber, was important, but there are a lot of these specific workplaces like a bar or a auto mechanic or all these different places. But like one of the things that made The Office so great is it is an office, and like you don't even need to know what they make or what they sell. Like you do find that out, but it is not at all critical to what's going on in the show. I think a lot of other shows, there were other shows that essentially tried to copycat The Office, some of which did succeed. Like I think Parks and Rec in a lot of ways is more successful than The Office. I think that's a very interesting discussion of like which one actually is the better show, which one's more successful. I think Parks and Rec took a lot of things The Office did well and then did their own things well and managed to really, really, again, skirt the problematic nature of a lot of the jokes that The Office made. So all of this being said, this Australian version is happening. I don't know how familiar you guys are with Kiwi humor. Like I've watched a few movies and like I would anticipate like What We Do in the Shadows kind of stuff, which is not often my favorite thing. So I don't know that this is going to be for me kind of regardless. Techtic, you kind of brought up like, bringing the concept into the modern era with things like remote work. I think that's going to be really interesting. I think it could also potentially be really challenging. How do you tell it? Like, it's not that hard to, I guess, televise a Zoom call and make it comedic, right? We've all been on Zoom calls where comedic things have happened, Teams calls or whatever the service may be. But the bottom line is like when you're all in the office, like the characters in the original American Office, where like there's just so much more possibility for characters to interact and for things to happen. So like it's going to be interesting to see narratively how they manage that, because if you read through kind of the press release for this show coming out, they specifically mention remote work as like being kind of one of the inciting incidents that like gets the managing director to kind of start taking some goofy actions and producing a lot of the comedy. So it should be very interesting. If it's on Prime Video and if it picks up some traction, I will certainly give it a try, if only because there's really no downside to doing so. All 8 episodes are coming out on October 18th. So if you like one, you can just blast through it. So be on the lookout for that. The company name also I just want to shout out. Let me just make sure I say this right. Flinley Craddock. It's a packaging company, not to be confused with a paper company. So like, I think part of the joke of these shows is that the companies themselves are very boring. And because I don't know that the British office was a paper company. It may have been something equally boring, again, like a packaging company or something. So anyways, again, October 18th on Amazon Prime Video. We're going to take a short break now before coming back to talk about Dragon Age: The Veilguard. Before we take our short break, though, it is that time in the show where we shout out our fantastic Patreon producer, Mr. Stephen Keller. Stephen has been supporting this show for quite a while now. He has done so at the night level on our Patreon, which is the highest of our 3 levels of support. He is a producer on this show, therefore he gets this producer shout out every episode, in which we thank him for his service. He, of course, also gets input into the weekly game segment, the occasional guest spot on the show, and, of course, access to the monthly secret segment and vlog. There is also a Squire level of support on our Patreon, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and the vlog, and a page level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. So you can head over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast to get all the details on any and all of those levels of support. Thanks again to Steven. We'll be right back to talk about Dragon Age: The Veilguard.
I'm Harrison.
I'm Jordan.
Well, I'm Harrison.
I'm fucking Jordan.
All right!
And we're the Grief Rio Podcast. Let us be your unnatural Sherpa guides on this existential plane of mountainous game and movie exploration.
And don't forget about that spookiness that lives within us all, but mainly in you, you spooky bitch.
How dare I'm offended?
We've been voted the best podcast to listen to by many.
By many, that means a few. That's more than one.
Results may vary. We'll see you on the next episode of Grief
Burrito, yeah!
Yes!
All right, we are back to talk about Dragon Age: The Veilguard. Now, if I recall correctly, isn't this the game that we got a trailer for where you like had a crew and you were all doing fighting and stuff, and they didn't show the main, like the head guy's face? Was that this one?
Yes.
'Cause I was trying to. Okay, so in this trailer that we got that tells us what the release date is, they show his face a lot, and as video game characters go, he's hot. First of all, is that fair to say? He's hot.
I mean, yeah,
He's just a hot guy. Shout out to Rook. That's his name. Rook. He's a hot guy. Otherwise, I don't want to, again, minimize what this is, but it's kind of just more of the same that we saw in the last trailer, which is that you assemble a bunch of folks who can do a bunch of different things, and you're going to do some Dungeons and Dragons stuff. This just watching this and also watching the last trailer for this game really just reminded me of the recent Dungeons and Dragons movie that came out, which was very good. And it was basically just, hey, we need to assemble a team to accomplish this mission. We have a spellcaster, we have a sword guy, we have, et cetera, et cetera. This trailer gave us a release date, which is Halloween, which in and of itself I think is pretty interesting. What are the market dynamics for a game releasing on Halloween? Aren't kids going to be trick-or-treating? Aren't adults going to be handing out candy? Nerdbomber, you're our resident BioWarean. First of all, is that a fair statement? I think it probably is.
Yeah, I would say so. I probably have the most BioWare experience out of everybody here.
So hit us with that spicy or ice cold take. As a BioWarean, what is your outlook on Dragon Age? What is your experience with Dragon Age? And are you interested in and or planning on purchasing the Veilguard?
So first of all, going back to that first trailer that we saw a while back, I mean, it didn't scream Dragon Age or really BioWare to me. It felt a little too cartoony. Something about it was just off. Like, it seemed like a fun game if it wasn't a Dragon Age game. And it just wasn't what I or a lot of people expected. And I'm very confused why this was not the type of footage or trailer shown instead of that teaser that we got way back when. Because this, I feel like, felt a lot more tonally in line with what I expect from a Dragon Age game. Like, there's still a little bit more of a cartoonier aspect when you compare it to the original Dragon Age games. But for the most part, the storytelling tone, the character tone, everything about it, even like the battle just seemed more classically Dragon Age than what we saw before.
Yeah, this felt markedly less irreverent than than the first trailer did. This one, I really wonder about that first trailer because it felt like they were going out of their way and like painstakingly being like, "Ooh, this is the head guy. You can't see his face." Like I almost thought that it was implying like that's you. You'll never see that character because that's just you. Clearly that was not their plan because now they're like, oh, hey, that guy that was hooded and shrouded and mysterious. Anyways, here he is for like the entire trailer. So I kind of wonder what their intent was there. Maybe I'm overthinking it a little bit.
It's very confusing marketing. And I feel like there was so much backlash from that last irreverent trailer. I like how you coined that, irreverent trailer, that this is what the Dragon Age people want. And this is what I would want. That said, I do have mild experience with Dragon Age as a whole. In terms of my BioWare background, I'm definitely more of like a Mass Effect fan. Like that is my bread and butter. And I'm still waiting with bated breath for the next Mass Effect. But I did dabble, like I played the first Dragon Age. I think I dabbled in Inquisition a little bit. My problem with Dragon Age and that this is a bridge that I'm hoping they'll be able to get, right? No, a gap that I'm hoping they're able to bridge is that there's so much lore that I feel intimidated jumping into this franchise halfway through. And from what I understand of this trailer, like there's a lot of characters that are making their return from older games. And I'm wondering how they're going to approach kind of explaining and opening the doors for new players who haven't, gotten the experience of playing Dragon Age 1, 2, and Inquisition. How, like, make it accessible while also still honoring the storytelling and the lore that has already been established for this franchise. And I feel like that's kind of a major question for every franchise, especially as they continue getting into sequels and sequels and sequels. Like looking at you, Assassin's Creed with like 80,000 games at this point.
Boom.
But
right.
I'm wondering how they're going to manage it and if it's going to be something that new people can kind of jump into. Because honestly, there are a lot of like Dragon-y games, but there's not been a really in-depth, dialogue-driven, single-player RPG experience in the fantasy realm like this, like in the BioWare type game category in a pretty decently long time. And I feel like people want this.
Yeah, Dragon Age doesn't miss with this. I mean, in their other games, all you saw was like memes of their storyline and like some of the hot and heavy bits. And like, I'm just here for the hot and heavy bits. That's why I get excited about Mass Effect. That's why I get excited about this.
You play Mass Effect solely for the relationships and stuff?
Correct.
I mean, I can't.
To be clear, by hot and heavy, you mean like Bone Town? Like I didn't quite understand you.
Every BioWare game, you can
You're
go to
always
Bone
getting
Town.
smooching.
At least
right.
a smooching.
Well, that's,
if not, like, they're usually, I can't remember offhand. I feel like there's been a game where you've seen some like side boob or something like that. But for the most part, they do like a tasteful fade away. Like you see the lead up and then like it fades away into black, but then like it cuts back in and you're waking up in bed and you're like, ooh.
Tasteful Fade Away was my nickname in high school. The other thing about this, you mentioned Assassin's Creed. You mentioned that franchises like this, positioned like this one, I do think it is incumbent upon them to introduce new players gently to the franchise. Like Assassin's Creed, I think is a little bit different because I get your point that they have a million games and there's a deep web of characters at this point. There's a lot of lore, but also like I think it's a little bit different when you release a new game every like 2 years, like clockwork. Like you could set your watch to a new Assassin's Creed coming out like every 1 to 2 years. Dragon Age Inquisition came out 10 years ago. So like at this point, there have to be a lot of people who are seeing the trailer for Veilguard who like maybe weren't old enough to play Dragon Age Inquisition when it first came out. And like, this will be their introduction to the franchise. Like, that's not to say they couldn't go out now and go get a copy of Dragon Age Inquisition and like play it on an Xbox 360 or whatever console happened to exist at the time. I think it's a little bit different than Assassin's Creed where Assassin's Creed, I feel like at this point, considering how many games there are, I haven't played them in a while, but this main story has to be pretty stratified at this point. Like, this is a little different because there's very few flagship games and they are spread so far apart temporally that like you said, people are going to come in and like a character's going to show up and they're going to be like, okay, I'm supposed to know who this is, but I don't. Like, to me as a gamer, that's frustrating. So they need to have a good way to, I guess, manage that. I like to give them, as a developer like BioWare, I'd like to give them credit and say that they do have that figured out ahead of time. That's a kind of a hard thing to convey in a trailer, I think. So I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt for now. But I completely agree that that's probably a pretty important element of what they wind up doing. You mentioned that like there aren't many like solo fantasy RPGs that I guess you said that are like BioWare-esque, because like outside of that last caveat, there's like 6 or 7 games that would like a word with you. I guess there hasn't been an Elder Scrolls in a while, but like aren't there other like solo fantasy RPGs that are kind of scratching this itch? Or
But I don't think dialogue heavy. I don't think they're dialogue heavy. And I think that's a big thing. Like for someone like me, and maybe I'm wrong here, but like something like Elden Ring, I feel like wasn't like your choices were not as impactful. It was more about the grind.
It's another good example.
And I'm not sure, like I know, I always kind of go back and forth, and I guess this is a spoiler for Mass Effect, but like no matter what you did, all of the thousands of choices you made across the franchise, people were mad because in the end, the final game ended with like one of 3 or 4 different scenarios. While that may be true, like I like the illusion that my conversations and my choices matter. And I enjoy picking the dialogue. I enjoy really framing my character and thinking about my choices and if I'm going to be good or bad and how that's going to influence the world around me. And I don't think there's a lot of games like that, period. Like there's not that many dialogue driven games in this type of genre. Like, yes, there is, oh man, what is that? The game Disco Elysium. Like there's a ton of games like it, but it's not the same genre. It's not the same play style. There's just something about a BioWare game that I have been missing, and I feel like a lot of people miss. It's been a while.
Elden Ring,
like a decade.
Elden Ring is it's a good example of like isn't Elden Ring more of like a Dark Souls kind of thing? Like you said, there's not really a whole lot of story trappings. It's just like you're grinding. So I guess that's a fair point. And you know, we've talked on this show before about like how big a narrative challenge it is to take a lot of choices that it seems like you have a lot of agency and then funnel it down to a handful of outcomes. I believe Dishonored kind of does that, maybe not so much, but it's more so accumulating choices. But I think there are games that do a very good job creating that illusion of choice, I guess is what I will call it. And I agree that's a fine line to walk. So yeah, I mean, I think this certainly looks like it's going to be very good. Is it again, the Halloween thing, is Halloween a Tuesday or something? Like video games usually come out on Tuesdays, right? I don't know what day of the week Halloween is this year. Halloween seems like an interesting choice. I know I said that before. I just want to say it again. Halloween is a Thursday.
It's a weird choice.
I like, and also like I think it would make more sense if this game was like outwardly spooky, and it's not. So I find that very interesting. I guess we'll see. But
well, it's one of those things. Like, do you remember back in the day? And this really isn't that much of a thing anymore. But like midnight releases used to be a big deal, and a game like this would have had like a huge midnight release presence at your GameStops, EB Games, what have you, Best Buys. Name your store here.
Right.
I could never have seen Halloween flying in the past. Like you would have just avoided it because you're not going to get that big crowd and lineup.
I thought most games, and the Tuesdays never made sense to me, but I thought most games released on either Tuesdays or Fridays. I may be making that up. Friday makes perfect sense. It's you get out of work, you get it, and then that's your weekend. Or like you get out of school, you get it, and that's your weekend. Like that, to me, is a great way to get people excited for your game. Tuesday makes 0 sense. So again, I might be making that up. Thursday, and in particular, a Thursday that happens to be Halloween, I feel like also makes 0 sense. But, you know, who am I to judge? I'm sure they know what they're doing. There's important people working over at EA and BioWare that are figuring this sort of thing out. So we want to hear from you, our fans. Are you a Dragon Age fan? Are you excited for Valgard? Do you think releasing a video game on Halloween is a good idea or not? Don't let my opinion influence you. I have an account on Twitter. It is @OW86. We have @OW Nerdbomber, @OW Techtic, and our main show account @OnlineWarriors1. So hit us up over there and let's start a conversation. For the moment, though, let's transition into the next part of our show, which is What Are You Up To Wednesday? This is the part of the show where we talk about what we've been up to. I'm going to go first this week because I feel like I have really short. I'm kind of just grinding on a few different things right now. Not like physically. I just mean like I'm watching The Bear, and I'm like part of the way through season 2. I don't have a whole lot of an update. I'm enjoying it. It's a little stressful. Being a chef seems like it's really bad. If you're listening to this and you're a chef, I'm sorry, because it seems like a very difficult and stressful job. I'm also playing Overcooked with my wife. Actually, Overcooked 2, to be specific. Love Overcooked for easygoing couch co-op. And by easygoing, I guess I don't really mean easygoing. I just mean it's relatively easy to pick up and put down. But when you're playing it, it's just like 2.5 minutes of chaos that you just have to learn to manage. And it's a great communications exercise. So really enjoy that. I've played it many times before, so it's not really that new to me, but I am enjoying it. Otherwise, no further updates. Just kind of doing my thing over here. So I'm going to turn it over to my good friend Techtic to continue walking us down the lane that is this week.
Okay, so I'm still reading the second book in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. That's going great. I smoked a pork butt to provide Nerdbomber with a delicious pulled pork sandwich on a Hawaiian bun. She was shouting me out and my culinary prowess, so thank you for that. And I had a little bit of a backyard shindig, played some cornhole, had some friends over. It was a good time.
Before anyone asks, I was out of town. That's why I wasn't there. Don't.
We did that
try
on
coming to
purpose.
me
We didn't want him at our
in
party.
the comments.
We're like, when his schedule is busy, we don't want him there.
Yeah, that is true. I wasn't going to say it, but very cool. I did not realize she was shouting out your culinary expertise before, but that was a good late game kind of like plot twist in the podcast. So I appreciate that. Nerdbomber, that leaves us with you.
All right, so I've been watching a decent amount of TV. So we started Mr. Throwback, and this is the show with Steph Curry and Adam Pally, and essentially this is a Peacock original, and I believe it's only one season. But the premise of the show is that Adam Pally plays a character who's an adult now, but as a child, he was like this basketball phenom. He was like a 12-year-old who was breaking all these records, getting recruited, but then it comes out that his dad had lied about his age so that he was actually older than all the other kids. So then it was like fraud, and he lost all of his like opportunities and stopped playing basketball and basically just kind of became a loser when he grew up. But he was best friends before all of this happened with a young Steph Curry. Well, as an adult, he ends up owing money to I think they said the Polish Mafia, which I'm not sure that exists, but if it does, shout out, I guess, to the Polish Mafia for making this story possible. But he owed a bunch of money to the Polish Mafia. So because he's in a bind, he goes and seeks out Steph Curry and ends up lying to him and telling him he needs money because his daughter has a terminal illness. So he needs money to, fund her medical bills. And then it just kind of snowballs because they kind of rekindle their friendship, and Steph Curry tries to then make this massive celebrity basketball fundraiser for his not dying daughter. So that is the premise of the show. There's obviously some dark humor in there. You have to, be comfortable with some moral grayness. I find it really funny. I think Techtic finds it funny. There's at least a few jokes every episode that we watch where we go, hey. And Steph Curry, he's awesome in this show as well. It's great. I would definitely give it a shot. I think there's only 8 episodes. They're half-hour shows. You really can't go wrong. And like I said, it's a limited series, I believe. So one season. It's the perfect end of summer send off for TV watching.
If I remember correctly, you're a big Adam Pally person.
I do. I find him really funny. Yes. Anything that he's in, I end up finding really funny. So it started with Happy Endings. I don't know if you're familiar with that show.
I'm curious how you're going to like Knuckles, because he's his compadre.
He was in the Sonic movies as well.
Was he?
Correct.
Yeah, he was.
Yes.
He was the assistant sheriff or whatever in those movies. So, but yeah. We've watched that. Like I said, it's on Peacock. I would recommend. And then I also started watching Emily in Paris. There's a new season of that. Okay, guys, I got to level with you here. You're not watching Emily in Paris for highbrow comedy. You're not doing that. You're watching Emily in Paris because you can kind of turn your brain off. There's rom-com elements. There's weird bombastic scenarios that the main character is being put in all the time, very fish out of water type comedy. That's what you're there for. You're there for the set pieces. You're there to see her gallivant around Paris. You're not taking it seriously, and neither am I. And I'm glad that the new season is back, because this is a show that I started watching when I had COVID, was that a year or two ago? And then I feel like I've just been waiting to see what happens because the last season ended on a cliffhanger. So now here we are, and it's great. Netflix did the stupid thing though, where they split it up. There's the part A and part B of the season. So anxiously awaiting part B of the season, but it is out there in the world. And then in terms of games, I've just been continuing to play NHL, playing Hockey Ultimate Team. It's exactly what you expect. There's not a whole lot more for me to say. I am surprised there's longevity in terms of the different tasks and goals for you to unlock new cards to improve your team. Like, I remember in the past, I would always just get really frustrated because the only way you could get cards and packs to open in the game was either to spend real money or to play like 800 hours. But they've done like the Hut Moments thing where you basically are placed in a game and it's like, oh, this is a real game moment. Score 3 goals with this player because they did it in the 3rd period of this game on this date. And they drop you into that scenario and you got to do it. And then if you do that, you win a card. And I find that to be an extension of the game that makes it feel a little bit more like there's like something worth going back to. You're not just playing like endless games because eventually I'd get bored. There's like a task and a goal. And it's a really good like late summer night right before I go to bed. I just want to pop in like 15-minute game here and there. There I go.
Right on. Well, I think that brings us to Quiztown, and you are the mayor of Quiztown this week, if I recall correctly. Before we get into the quiz, I should go over the rankings. Nerdbomber, you're 11-6.
Woo!
Top lady right now. I am 10-6. Techtic 6-14, and our Patreon producer Steven is 1-1. So, without further ado, the floor is yours. I do plan on winning Techtic, so maybe just I don't know. Good luck.
All right, so this week's topic is Kraken Trivia. Are you prepared? Are you ready?
What, like cracking a beer?
You're so funny.
Like cracking a joke, apparently.
When was the first time the Kraken was described in modern history? And I'm talking like the creature of the sea.
Sure. You're looking for a year?
Yes.
You said modern history, which is very confusing. I'm gonna go with 600 AD.
It depends what you mean by Kraken. Like, if you're gonna call anything that's like
the creature of the sea. When was the first time someone was like, I saw a Kraken?
Well, if it's the creature of the sea, I'm gonna say it's way earlier. If it's specifically the Kraken, that could be later. That could be like a term that came up with like pirates and such.
Kraken. The Kraken. The Kraken. In the sea. I'm not like, we're not going back and being like, when was the first time someone was like, there's a creature in the sea? I'm talking about the Kraken.
Cracking these nuts.
Okay.
I'm going to say this was 2000 BC.
All right. And the AD answer takes it.
Fudge.
Illeagle gets his point. The Kraken, as a subject of sailor superstition, was first described in the modern era in a travelogue by Francesco Negri. I think that's how you pronounce his name.
I wanted to say later,
1700.
but the way you were like, the sea creature, you were maybe.
The book describes the Kraken as a massive fish, which was many-horned and many-armed.
You spent so much time getting the wrong answer, Techtic.
Well, because I should have just went with my gut. She said it too many times that it made me think later.
All right. Kraken Satina is a pit chain and likely tectonic fault on Triton, the largest natural satellite of the planet Neptune. In what year was its name officially approved by the International Astronomical Union?
Did you say pit chain? I'm confused
Pit
by that
chain.
entire sentence.
Tectonic fault. But
She's just saying things.
Okay. I mean, I have enough information to proceed, but Techtic is first.
I mean, I can look up a definition of pit chain. It's
This was
basically
2008.
a pit chain is like a bunch of craters on a planet that we can see in a chain.
2009.
And you both busted. 1991.
Rest in peace to me for misusing my +1. Okay, fair enough.
All right, I'm gonna stay in the space realm. Kraken Mare is the largest known hydrocarbon sea on the surface of Saturn's moon Titan. What is its diameter in kilometers?
Saturn's moon. Oh, here we are again in deep space in kilometers. Its diameter in kilometers. It's very big. I mean, it's 3,600.
3,601.
And you both wasted
Yeah!
because you both busted 1,170 kilometers.
Techtic game, respect game. We're well matched. Let's continue.
We're going to pivot the type of Kraken that we're talking about here. How many seats does the Seattle Kraken NHL Arena have for attendees?
35,000 seats.
That feels low. I'm gonna go to 50,000.
Have you guys been to a hockey game ever?
Yeah.
Have you guys been to an NFL game ever?
Yeah.
Have you compared the
Yes.
size of those arenas / stadiums?
Not critically, no.
Okay, well, An NFL stadium tends to be, in the multiple tens of thousand seats range, and it is much bigger than any NHL arena ever will be. And
Okay, so we both busted.
You both
is where you're going
busted.
with this.
Yes. They
Okay.
have 17,151 seats.
Okay, I wasn't that far off.
I accept that. Yeah. If this last question isn't about the rum, then I don't know what we're doing here.
Well, I'm glad to oblige. How much alcohol by volume does Kraken rum have?
Thank God. How much alcohol by volume? Is this a percentage that you're looking for?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Go over
Alcohol by
100. Go
volume.
over 100. Go over 100.
It's not. You're losing, by the way. You have to get this right, or it's over.
I always go on overtime, baby.
It's 32. 32.
I'm trying everything in my power to visualize the bottle.
How would that help you?
Because then I could just see what it says on the label.
Oh, visualize it that hard? Yeah, good luck, buddy.
Is this the dark spiced rum?
What other Kraken rum do you know?
They have two variants.
He's going for longest quiz question answering time of all time. So let him explore the space.
40.
And he forces my hand. I'm going to have to find a tiebreaker question because it is 47%. Please hold.
Yeah, I knew pretty much as soon as I said my answer that it was too low, so that doesn't surprise me.
I knew it was too low, but I couldn't be too close to you. But I also didn't want to bust. It wasn't a bad guess.
Like I said, game respect game.
How many tentacles does it take to make a Kraken laugh? Tentacles.
All right. So the Kraken was also featured in Pirates of the Caribbean. It was a tip of the hat to the famed giant squid in Walt Disney's own 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. In what year was that movie released? And I'm talking about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Not Pirates of the Caribbean.
No.
I just sent my answer and I have no idea. I think I'm plugged here.
And Techtic takes it. He sent in 1952, Illeagle sent in 1973, and the release date of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was December 23rd, 1954, and Techtic wins for the first time in a long time.
I won last
So
week.
quite close, too.
Whatever.
Techtic,
Well,
proud of you. That moves me down to 10 and 7. Techtic
call
to
it a
7 and
comeback.
14. He's climbing that ladder, folks. If you want to see him continue climbing the ladder, you're going to have to watch the episode 2 weeks from now, because next week he will be hosting. I should say you should listen to next week's too, just so you have the continuity. You can head over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to your podcast. Leave us a review. Hit us up on Twitter in the places where we said we are on Twitter. You should be able to find us pretty easily. And tell your friends, tell your wife, tell your husband, tell your dog, tell your teacher, tell your parole officer, if that's your sort of thing. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, stay safe and keep on podcasting.